Hello and welcome to the Running on Carbs podcast. This is episode number 50 of the podcast, and I am your host, as usual, as always, Coach Val. Welcome. All right, so today is another episode of the Nutrition Spotlight series that I've been doing every month. So every month, if you haven't been here very long, or if this is the first episode you've tuned into, number one, welcome. And if it is the first episode you've tuned into, every month I've been spotlighting one nutritional food that I like to call out all of the nutrition elements of it and how those directly relate to our training and to runners specifically. So I pull out all the different nutrients that I think are most beneficial to runners or very athletic people and why that food is so beneficial in your training. So, we're going to do the same thing today. Today, I am going to deep dive into one food, the humble and delicious and versatile sweet potato. I personally love sweet potatoes, but I have to say that when I first went plant based, these yummy little delicious tubers got me into a lot of trouble because I listened to all of the plant-based doctors that were saying, you can eat as much as you want of plant foods. Well, kinda, kinda, sorta. I could, but it didn't mean that I wouldn't pay the consequence on the scale. So, too much of a good thing is still too much. So, when we are consuming our sweet potatoes, we want to do it in a responsible manner and not, buy the largest sweet potato ever and consume those on a regular basis without balancing them properly with the rest of our very important macronutrients, such as protein and a little bit of fat. So, today let's talk more about these power packed, nutrition packed uh, vegetable, the sweet potato. Okay, so I'm also, by the way, going to address something a little bit different this time. I always talk about, obviously, like I just presented, that these foods are really great for runners and athletes and active individuals, active women. But today, I'm also going to add another layer on top of the nutrition information I normally do, and I'm going to talk about why I think the sweet potato is the best vegetable or plant food, I should say, for perimenopausal and menopausal women who are training hard, like training for marathons. So I am in the middle of, or actually, I'm not in the middle of it. I've just started training for my first marathon in a very long time. So it'll be my second marathon, but I'm going to be running this at 50 years old. So this will be my birthday marathon for my 50th birthday over the summer. And so, as I'm thinking about my training and ramping up, I started delving into my nutrition. What are some of the best foods that I can start consuming or continue or increase in my diet that'll support me in my training? And sweet potatoes were the one that I came up with. So I'll talk more about why I came up to that conclusion and what is so great about them specifically for women who are in perimenopause and menopause. But this episode is not only for women in that age range. Um, it is for anybody because sweet potatoes have a variety of nutrients that just support the athletic and lifestyle in general. So we'll talk about that, and you'll know so much more about sweet potatoes by the end of this that you never imagined. Okay, first off, let's talk about the nutrient makeup of the sweet potato. Just some basics. So I'm going to base this on what would be maybe a somewhat reasonable serving size. I always like to base it on something uh, common. So we're going to talk about a half a cup of sweet potato, which is pretty reasonable for a carbohydrate in a just sort of regular size meal, which is about 100 grams. So half a cup of sweet potato is around 90 calories. Not too bad. Um, and well, it depends on what else you're pairing it with, right? But 90 calories of sweet potato. There is hardly any fat in it, so only about 0.2 grams of fat, and, cholesterol, of course, is a plant food, so there's no cholesterol. Sodium, there's 36 milligrams of sodium in that amount. Carbohydrates, which is what we're really going for, right? That's what we're wondering about 21 grams of carbohydrates in that half a cup. And then of that, the dietary fiber is about 3.3 grams, so, 3 grams of dietary fiber. And protein, there's about 3 grams of protein as well. I'm sorry, 2 grams of protein, not 3. 2 grams of protein. And what's nice about the sweet potato too is there's a lot of great, minerals and, other nutrients in it. So as far as, like, calcium's concerned, there's 38 milligrams of calcium and not very much iron, about zero point 0.7 milligrams of iron. And then potassium, though, potassium is really great. It's 475 milligrams in that half a cup, of sweet potato. So pretty good, nutrient makeup. You can do a lot with that. There's room for pairing with other foods, so it makes a nice base carbohydrate, as I like to call it. Um, and then a good pairing with other, macronutrients with it. When you are shopping for sweet potatoes, you're gonna wanna look for ones that are nice and firm, they're not mushy, that they don't have things like growing out of them. Although you can eat, a sweet potato that has sprouted, you would just cut off those eyes, that have sprouted. But when you're buying them in the store, hopefully they're not sprouting. I would question your grocery store if that was the case. Try to find the freshest one. You don't want ones that are all kind of rough and wrinkly. That means they're pretty old. So they should be, firm and smooth and not mushy. Store them at home in a cool and dry place. But when you're in the store and you're shopping for sweet potatoes, don't just look for your standard orange sweet potato. Look for the purple ones. If your grocery store carries purple sweet potatoes, I highly recommend them. And I'm not talking about the ones that are purple on the outside and then you cut them and they're white on the inside. I'm talking about the ones that are purple all the way through. Those are going to be packed with antioxidants. I mean, packed with them. So the darker the food and the more like blue you can get, like the purple and blue hues of foods, the more antioxidant rich they are. So if you really want the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to nutrition density, go for the darker vegetables. So in this case, look for your dark sweet potatoes, dark purple sweet potatoes. They also cook differently. So the purple sweet potatoes are a little more firm, and you have to be careful of overcooking them though, because if you overcook the purple sweet potato, they get kind of dry. They have a different texture when you're cooking them, so they're more firm. All right, so let's talk about some of the benefits. And I'm going to start off with the benefits to the perimenopausal and menopausal woman who's in training. So, from a training perspective, sweet potatoes they provide a complex carbohydrate, which is great because that's going to fill you up longer. It's going to burn slower. Um, it offers that sustained energy. So, like for during your long runs, you've got that nice sustained energy that you're not getting the big spikes out of one way or the other. They're also rich in potassium, which helps potentially with muscle cramps, which, of course, as we know on our long runs, well, muscle cramps can come from a lot of different things, but one of which could be potassium. So, it could help with prevention of muscle cramps. It's moderate on the glycemic index, which means that you're gonna have that steady energy, and you're not gonna have, like I said, those spikes and crashes from your blood sugar, just, going up and down with really high, GI index food. I'll talk a little bit more about what that is in a minute. Um, there's also, beta carotene. So giving it that orange flavor, flavor, please, no, not orange flavor, the orange color. So the beta carotene gives the sweet potato that orange coloring, and that is very good. It converts over to vitamin A, and that all of this supports your bone health. And so women who are in a perimenopausal, menopausal age range, we really need to be considerate of, the nutrients that we're getting in to support our bone health. It's just a natural process of aging, but nutrition has a big impact on on that. So we want to do everything we can to support our bones. One of which, of course, is good nutrition. It's also rich in naturally occurring vitamin C, so you're not having to take any type of supplement or anything, which is a whole other story. But we want the natural occurring vitamin C, and that's going to help with collagen production. And as we age, we lose that, so we lose the production of new collagen. So we want to really support that, um, for our joint health, for our, iron absorption as far as like vitamin C. Um, and of course, collagen is in so many parts of our body. And if you're plant based, you don't want to take a non plant based source of collagen. So we need to add in the nutrients that naturally build collagen in our system, helps our body create it itself. So we want to add in those nutrients instead of consuming the actual collagen source. Um, Also, as I mentioned before, not only do purple sweet potatoes have a lot of antioxidants, the orange sweet potatoes do as well, because they are still a pretty dark color. They're not a white like a white potato, they're an orange color. So they have quite a lot of antioxidants in them. And the antioxidants are going to help with inflammation, that you're going to acquire through that intense training for a marathon. Um, there's also that high fiber content. So the high fiber content is going to help you again maintain that level blood sugar stability, and it's going to help your gut health. So we'll talk a little bit more in a couple minutes about um, timing and gut health and things like that. But just know that having this, extra fiber is always good for the gut health as long as you've got it nice and balanced and you're not overdoing it, extreme on one end or the other suddenly. Um, but anyway, both the fiber content and the antioxidants and everything, that's all going to help you because at the end of a long run, your hormones are like, whoo, through the roof, right? They're they're doing all sorts of things trying to recover and put your body back together. So, these things like gut health and stuff that can all be affected by your hormonal changes that can happen on a long run and just during perimenopause. So, we want to be able to support that. So, what are the ideal fueling timing? Um, it's beneficial for women to take in sweet potatoes either before or after a run, or even during a run, which I'll give you some options for that. Uh, but it's beneficial whenever you'd like. There's just different ways to take in the sweet potatoes. So, and it also depends on your run intensity. So, if you're going to have a very hard run versus an easy run, might dictate when you want to eat your sweet potatoes, either before or after. So, for a long run that's going to be maybe 2 hours or more, you want to eat early enough that your food has time to digest and not be sitting like a rock in your stomach. So maybe 2 or 3 hours before your run, and just allow for that digestion. Medium sweet potato with a small amount of healthy fat, like maybe almond butter, which, almond butter on a sweet potato is absolutely to die for delicious. If you haven't tried it, try it. And that's going to supply you a real nice sustained energy because you're combining that carbohydrate and the fat for satiety and that long slow burn energy. So that's a great long run pre long run meal, maybe for breakfast. Sweet potatoes are great for breakfast. On shorter runs, if you're going to do that, then maybe eat, I don't know, an hour or two before your long run. Again, allow for some digestion and stick to smaller portion. You're not going to do a whole, big sweet potato or, a full portion, and just do something smaller. Maybe you like to run early in the morning. So something smaller. You don't want to be The idea here is that you don't want to be sidelined by the higher fiber content. So if you're not used to taking in fiber like that in the morning before a run, you might want to try it out when you're on a treadmill run that day, or a shorter, nearby neighborhood run, and maybe increase slowly as well. So there's some different things you can do to start introducing your body to higher fiber in the early morning or before runs. A pre-run tip. So for sweet potatoes before run, one way to help with that fiber content is to, and make it easier to digest, is to take off the skin. So cook your sweet potatoes with the skin on, but then if you're going to eat them before a run, just don't eat the skin. And that's going to help quite a lot as well to take down that fiber content, but you're still getting all the nutrient benefits from your sweet potato before the run. After the run, we need to fuel. Hopefully, you all have been here around long enough to know that I'm a big advocate of fueling before, during, after, all of it, because you need to stay well fueled to support your energy systems, your body. And, red S is something that has been very much more talked about and has become there's been more awareness around it now, this is the wrong podcast to get all into that right now, this episode. But it, is very often a side effect, if you will, from poor fueling. So, anyway, fueling is very important. So post run, we want to bring in more nutrients. We want to replenish those glycogen stores that were depleted during that long run. So within about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour max of your run, you want to bring in your fuel. Sweet potatoes work really well for this for a couple of reasons. Number one, the carbohydrates, they're going to help restore those glycogen stores that you depleted. The potassium is going to aid in electrolyte balancing, so rebalancing your electrolytes. And a sweet potato pairs really well with a protein source. So I had mentioned earlier almond butter, but another source might be a vegan Greek style yogurt. So vegan Greek style yogurt, Silk is a brand that I like that I don't know of anybody else that makes one, but I know Silk has a Silk brand makes a really good vegan Greek style yogurt. Or you can make a tofu ricotta and put that on it. That would be absolutely delicious also. So just pairing it with a good plant-based protein source afterward for muscle recovery. For perimenopausal women specifically, or menopausal women specifically, consuming the sweet potatoes post-run may be really especially beneficial because timing of that can help to stabilize that blood sugar. Again, that hormonal fluctuations might otherwise cause like really dramatic swings one way or the other. And so we want to bring that into balance. And so for women of a certain age, it's really important to have that hormone balancing effect of the sweet potatoes. So let's talk about preparing sweet potatoes, the best way to cook sweet potatoes, and the impact on the glycemic index. And I know I mentioned the glycemic index briefly earlier. So now I want to talk a little bit more about that too. So the cooking method that you choose is going to alter the chemical makeup of the food. That's just what cooking does. It changes the chemical breakdown. The GI of sweet potatoes, it's going to vary based on your cooking method. So the one that is said to be the quote unquote best way to cook sweet potatoes and keep it at the lower end of the GI scale is to boil sweet potatoes. So boiling has been shown to retain more resistant starch. That's really hard to say. Resistant starch, which is a type of fiber that resists the digestion process and has a low impact on the blood sugar levels. So that's going to keep it on that low GI index scale. What was recommended is boiling for 30 minutes sweet potatoes um, to allow for that low GI index. So if you were to boil a sweet potato for 30 minutes, then the study showed that it would retain a GI value of about 46. If you boiled those sweet potatoes for just 8 minutes, which is like practically parboiling, I think, when you think about a sweet potato, um, it's going to retain a GI value of about 61. So, still considered low on the GI index. On the other hand, if you were to roast the sweet potatoes or bake them, which is very popular, or if you were to fry them, then all of those cooking methods are actually going to create a higher GI index scale or higher level on the GI index scale. Roasting and baking process, those two cooking methods, they destroy that resistant starch. And so that is what is going to cause it to have a higher index number. Peeled and roasted, they have a GI, a glycemic index scale of 82. And so let me tell you a little bit about the glycemic index, and that's going to maybe help put some parameters around these numbers that I'm naming off. The glycemic index is a ranking system, and it's used to measure how much certain foods increase blood sugar levels. And that could be really important because if your blood sugar spikes and then comes down, then you're not feeling satiated, number one, and it could lead to more feeling hungry sooner. Even though you've eaten this food, you're going to feel hungrier sooner because the digestion process, is too quick, and so you're going to want to eat more food. Therefore, it's going to spike up and down because you keep consuming food. That's just one real layman's example of it. It scores foods on a system of 1 to 100. So anywhere between 1 and 100, with 1 being the lowest and then 100 being the highest. And it ranks them also within that scale. It calls them low, medium, and high on the index. Foods that are high in on the GI index are simple carbs, things that digest quickly, or added sugar, and they're broken down much more quickly in the bloodstream. And those are going to be higher on that scale, so closer to the 100 than to the 1. Foods that are high in protein, fat, and fiber, they have less of an effect on blood sugar. Um, and so they're typically going to be a bit lower on the GI scale. And that's partly why we recommend that when you are going to take in carbohydrates, especially if they're higher on the GI index, if you pair it with a fat, it helps. And so it kind of creates this lower GI outcome by pairing it with the fat. So it kind of slows that down a little bit. Or slows down the digestion a little bit. So it stays in your bloodstream a bit longer and it doesn't give you those peaks and valleys, spikes. As runners, though, I kind of hear some of you thinking right now, and I hear your thoughts because I had them too. Well, sometimes as a runner, I want the higher GI index food. And that's very true. So I think that there's a time and a place for everything. And as long as we are choosing the healthier options and we're not reaching for all the processed foods to get that higher GI index, There is a time and a place for different cooking methods for these foods. And there's not to say that a high GI index food is quote unquote bad. I don't think there is any bad on the GI index scale. It's just, what are your goals? And, it's just another tool in your toolbox as far as nutrition planning. And it helps you to put together foods more methodically so that you can get the best outcome for your training. And so, yeah, sometimes maybe you want that roasted sweet potato because you want the higher GI index because you're going to be training harder and you need that extra boost of energy. Other times, if you're just having a, regular meal, you don't want that blood sugar spike, or maybe you're going out for a run, so you don't want that first thing in the morning, or maybe you do. Maybe that's when you want it. You want it first thing in the morning, power your run, and then come back and have the boiled sweet potato afterward when you're trying to just replenish. So there's, a lot of strategy around food timing and what it is you hope to accomplish from your nutrition. Um, so let's talk a little bit about that ideal cooking a little bit more, and also how to use sweet potatoes. So if you've never cooked with sweet potatoes, you might be wondering, okay, boil, what do I do with it? Boiled potatoes sounds boring, potentially, but it depends on how you pair them. So ideal cooking method, as we talked about before, if you want that low GI index, which I think majority of the time that's what we're aiming for, we're looking for that sustainable energy, then pressure cooking is actually the ideal way. So, although the study talked about boiling sweet potatoes, pressure cooking actually retains more of the nutrients than boiling, because when you boil food, a lot of the nutrients just leach out into the water. Well, we're losing it then, and we want those nutrients. So the better way to maintain the high density of nutrition is to cook sweet potatoes in an instant pot, for example, or pressure cook them. Um, Part of the reason is that it's going to preserve those nutrients. It's going to maintain that low GI index. You are cooking the sweet potatoes at a relatively low heat when you pressure cook. And it's also being cooked under less period of time. So even though it's in the instant pot for a while, the cooking time is actually much shorter. Again, you're not leaching out the nutrients into the water, because when you use a pressure cooker, you're only putting maybe a cup of water in the bottom, and then you put the sweet potato on top of the trivet. So it's outside of the water, it's on top, and it's not sitting in the water, leaching out all of its nutrients. Yeah, some will escape because that just happens in cooking, but less. So you'll retain more by cooking them this way. So, sweet potatoes are a really great base carbohydrate for a lot of different meals. And I could sit here all day long and just name off different meals to you. Um, Pinterest is great for those kind of things, but I'll give you a couple of examples of just some things that you can pair it with and enjoy. One is that, pair it with a plant-based or plant-based protein. So tempeh is a really great option to pair with sweet potatoes, tofu, um, black beans, any kind of bean, really. I mean, you can pair it with just any kind of plant-based protein that you want. It's going to probably go fantastic with anything. One meal that I really like, there's a couple of them, but one meal that I really like is pairing a sweet potato, like uh, mashed up sweet potato, put on a wrap, it's almost like using it in place of hummus. So if you were going to put hummus on a wrap, instead I put sweet potato on the wrap, and then adding in smoky tempeh, which is kind of like that, bacony flavor, but obviously it's not. And it's smoky tempeh. And I buy them in the store, but you could easily make it at home by just marinating some tempeh with some liquid smoke and some other seasonings as well. That it's really easy and you don't have to like season it for very long because tempeh likes to gather up all the flavors that you marinated in, and it does it pretty quickly. You actually don't want to over marinate tempeh, or it is inedible. So you're going to go easy. So wrapping or using sweet potato in a wrap with the smoky tempeh and veggies or whatever else you want in there travels really well, and you've got nutrition, tastes delicious, travels well, great on the go meal. So try a sweet potato wrap. They're wonderful. If you are someone who likes to fuel your runs with real food, then sweet potatoes are the way to go. And even if you haven't tried it, but you've been interested in trying to fuel your runs with real food rather than gels, I know a lot of people just don't want to take in the gels. They don't feel like they're natural enough, or they, just don't like the flavor, the texture, and they just prefer real food. Then sweet potatoes are perfect food for that. There's a couple things you can do. If you're okay chewing and running, which I tried this and I was not, but maybe you are, then lightly roasting them would be fine. Especially in this case, that higher GI index might be beneficial if you're going to be consuming them on your run. That would be a good time to have that high GI index food. Um, but you have to chew, and that can be difficult for a lot of people. So try it out, see if it works for you. Otherwise, what you can do is cook them in the instant pot, make them soft, take off the skin, mash them. Make it all mushy like mashed potatoes, like it will be mashed sweet potatoes, and then add in something like another carbohydrate. So add in maple syrup. You could add in blended dates. You can soak and blend dates with the sweet potato, and that will give you a nice boost. It'll be because of the dates and the sweet potato together, or the maple syrup and sweet potato together. You're going to get a simple sugar in there with your complex, so that's going to help with your digestion. The complex carbohydrate along with the simple are going to, mix together, so they won't be so high, but it'll be enough to help fuel that run. Um, and they're going to taste really good. So, especially if you mash up the sweet potato, you can use it kind of like a gel. You can put it in a packaging where you can squeeze it. You have to get creative on that part, but you have to find a way to store it and carry it with you. But that could be a good replacement on a run if you don't like consuming gels. So try it out. Let me know how it works if that's something that interests you. Um, okay, so short and sweet episode today. That is the humble but versatile sweet potato for you. I hope you got a lot out of that and that you enjoyed it. I mean, there's the skinny on sweet potatoes, right? Um, but pull out your Instant Pot, get cooking. Tell me what you do with the sweet potatoes. Let me know if you use them to fuel your runs, like on the runs. Again, I tried it and I couldn't do the chewing part. So, but I never tried the mashed ones because I'm okay with gels, but maybe you aren't. And if you aren't, I would love to hear how you use them. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed this episode, help another runner friend that you've never met before to find us as well, and give the show a like on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to it, and write a review would be so wonderful. We have a couple new reviews, and I just love reading them. And I get so excited when I look and I see another happy person listening to the episode. So thank you for that review. And I really appreciate it. And hopefully, if you also have appreciated it as a listener today, you will share a happy review as well. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you here next Thursday. And in the meantime, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val. Have a great week.